Hello. Welcome to Season 10 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is Because We Have the Microphone. And because we have the microphone, you will listen as we discuss a bunch of movies that we just kind of feel like watching with no rhyme or reason. Think of it as a collection of movies that we've referenced a lot in previous seasons or been curious about for a long time. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So we've been threatening to do this for a long time, so no one should be surprised.
That's a good day.
I'm as excited about this episode as I have been for anything we've ever recorded in the however many years we've been doing this.
I know. I was thinking about it earlier, though. And, as far as our downloads go, we are, it's just getting more and more each time. And it's like, once we start getting that, it's like, let's change directions and go towards Westerns.
Yeah. Exactly.
Let's start over.
We zig when they're zagging, man. Like that's how this works.
Yeah, it's like, you guys enjoy listening?
This is how we've always operated.
Yeah.
As soon as we do something other people like, we go back to doing things they don't like.
Yeah, and then wonder why we never get recognition for what we do.
Exactly. But yeah, so we're in season 10.
Yep.
The tagline for season 10 is as long as I have the mic, and we're just doing whatever we want to do. But more seriously, we have picked some movies that we've referenced a lot when talking about horror movies, and we're now kind of circling back to some of those. And even though they may not fit specifically in the horror genre, I feel like there are some that do things really well that you see in horror movies that are maybe sort of like established patterns or are ways of creating creative ways of creating, intensity or anxiety or all those things that we want from horror movies. So we're going to branch out just a little bit and help kind of explain why we keep referencing some of these other movies. And if you don't like it, just come back next week and we'll be back to a horror movie. Except for next week isn't, but the week after that it will be.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're just going to record episodes.
Yeah.
And hey, you got to change it up in life. We're on what, like season 10? That's a lot of seasons. Okay?
We've watched a lot of movies and even some TV.
That's very true. Been a good time.
Yeah. But really, who could complain about this movie? I mean, it's got Sharon Stone, Gene Hackman, Russell Crowe, a very young Leonardo DiCaprio, Bobby Elvis from The Sons of Anarchy, and Old Man Marley from Home Alone.
Yeah. And Gary Sensei, who was Lieutenant Dan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. Keith David, too. Yeah.
It's impressive. I mean, we've got a lot to talk about with this one, but I was quite surprised in going back to it how many big names there were. Because I had seen this movie several times, but I'd never really stopped and thought about that. And then I started listing them, and I was like, man, that's a lot. So, yeah,
I think this makes me I feel like every time you have a movie that has like a huge cast, it means that like an actor that was well-known actor, maybe Sharon Stone or so, wanted to do this and got their friends to do it with them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think that's definitely because it wasn't like the budget of this was like crazy, know. So yeah. But anyway, I will do the introduction, and then you can do your fun facts, and then we will get into the not so horrific details.
Nice. Sounds good.
In 1995, Sony Pictures Releasing brought us The Quick and the Dead, a modern western that was directed by Sam Raimi and written by Simon Moore, with contributions from Joss Whedon. This movie tells the story of a mysterious woman who rides into a debaucherous western town named Redemption to enter a gunfight tournament curated by a criminal boss named Herod. Herod thinks that the tournament is an elaborate setup to make an old partner rejoin the life of crime. What he doesn't count on is that Sharon Stone is a badass on a quest for revenge. The Quick and the Dead was made on a budget of $35 million and brought in over $46 million at the box office. Only about $18 million of that was in the US though, so the movie has long been considered a box office flop, despite being better than all of you people give it credit for. It can currently be rented for streaming on Amazon Prime Video. Or, if you started a Showtime subscription to watch all of Shameless during the pandemic and forgot to cancel it, you can watch The Quick and the Dead for free before you actually shut it down.
I like it. I actually own 2 copies of it. I don't know how or why. I was going through, I was like, oh, there's one, and then there's another.
How many Showtime subscriptions do you have?
I got 0. Yeah.
Well, what did you learn about this one?
So the main fact that I'm going to talk about is the score of this film. So this is the 10th action adventure film that Alan Silvestri scored within 5 years from each other. So the other films that they scored, which I'm going to talk about because they're just like some of these movies. Back to the Future Part 3, Young Guns 2, Predator 2, a movie called Ricochet, a movie called Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, The Bodyguard, Super Mario Bros. Live action film, Sidekicks, Judgment Night, and Blown Away. So Back to the Future, Young Guns, Predator 2, and Super Mario Bros. I mean, The Bodyguard. Yeah, The Bodyguard. I mean, come on. The guy had that's a jackpot, But
yeah.
Anyway, so those are the facts. Other than hey, Sharon Stone picked this because she likes Sam Raimi's work. Well, I assume, or she was able to pick the director, and it's because she liked his work from the Army of Darkness. And it's well, yeah, I'm sure that's a fact on most.
Sure. Yeah.
Big actors' films that they decide to do, they get to help pick this stuff out. But, yep, those are the facts.
Well, speaking of Sam Raimi, I really enjoyed the directing of this movie. Mm-hmm. And I know that there were some things that we talked about with Army of Darkness that I wasn't super into, but I feel like it played super well in the Western genre.
Yeah. Yeah. He definitely, you could tell he had spaghetti Western influence.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah. You could just tell, even, if you're just a fan of just Westerns in general, you can tell, okay, this is the, same as, whatever, insert Clint Eastwood Western here, film.
Yeah, and I feel like this one also had kind of a dark humor element to it.
Yeah.
That a lot of the, classic Westerns didn't so much. But I really enjoyed it. And I feel like it didn't do that at the expense of the suspense and danger of the movie. Whereas I feel like sometimes with Army of Darkness it did. And so, the way they did the gunfights was just fun. In Army of Darkness where Ash is working on his new hand or the car, and there's all those quick cuts to the close-ups of the weapons and him from different angles. Mm-hmm. I feel like he took a lot of those same ideas but applied them to the gunfights, and that just made him really creative and interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think that was also a little bit of the horror formula, where you have the super scary scenes within just sort of the story building reset in between. Because this movie was basically just that the whole time, but with gunfights instead of horror.
Yeah. No, I can see that for sure. I think, for me, the scene that you could definitely tell it was Sam Raimi was at the beginning of this film when she's riding through the cemetery.
Oh, yeah.
And you just, you see how the cemetery looks, and you're oh my god, this is Sam Raimi's, horror. You could tell he knows what he's doing when it comes to that, because it was the most perfect cemetery I've ever seen,
yeah.
in a film. It was it could be inserted in a horror film, or obviously this one, it just worked, and you're okay, yeah, this is exciting. He's still holding on to his roots,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think that, like I said, I definitely, now that we've watched 100 Sam Raimi movies over the past couple seasons, you definitely pick up on some of those stylistic elements that are uniquely his.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like this one did a number of things that were pretty standard fare for horror movies. And some of that had to do, like I said, with the way that, there was very blatant murder throughout the film. It was in the context of a gunfight, but it was still people dying. But then there was also sort of the dangerous element of knowing that Herod was in charge of all of it. And what I liked a lot was just, and part of this too is like I know the story going into it, so I was looking specifically for things that I felt like followed kind of horror norms. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm reading more into it than there is in some places. But like when Sharon Stone comes into town and she's got in her mind that she's there for revenge and that she's just going to like tear this guy up and avenge her dead father and all this stuff, right? And then she's like slowly realizing things are not what I thought they were. Herod is actually really well guarded. And he's got this gunfight that I'm now being forced to participate in if I want to get close to him. But it's not a fair gunfight. It's actually going to play out exactly the way he wants it to. And just sort of that ongoing thing. And then, you know, he calls her to have dinner with him and she goes and then he tricks her into thinking that he has a gun too, you know. And so like he's just constantly one step ahead. And so it goes from her thinking like I'm here to kick ass and take names to, oh my God, how am I going to survive this? And I think that is like a super kind of effective horror thing.
Yeah, and I think it's also like the other concept of horror with this for me was the trapped feeling. So like the citizens felt like they were trapped. Like, you know, even though you would think like, okay, well they should just be able to leave town. Well, that's not always the option because, you know, kind of like a dictatorship where they give them just enough money to, enough freedom to like survive, but that's all they're going to do. They're not going to give them enough to make a run for it. So it's like you have this claustrophobic trapped feeling inside the city where, you know, every dollar that's made, he gets 50 cents for, and it's just, he's, you know, he's everything on the town. Like he's the sheriff, you know, wants to be, he's the, you know, boss of the bar, he's the boss of the hotel, I mean, every single thing, and obviously he's a terrible person.
And a bad dad.
He's a terrible dad. Yeah, very bad dad. And so then they just, you know, you get that stuck feeling. So that for me was like, okay, you know, how's this? And it was just, okay, claustrophobic, stuck. You know, the maniac inside of you is like, why don't they just kill him? But then you think to yourself, like, that's not like that should be a normal response. And then also the lack of, so they were technically like the police department in a way, you know, the sheriff of the town, but the lack of like official, you know, federal police or, you know, whatever the case, federal agents or whatever, you know, you have this whole, I mean, that's a Western in a way, like where, you know, you have guys who there's no police going on, you can do whatever you want, and that was kind of the situation in this town. And it's just like a creepy town that it's normal to have a situation where they all get together and it's going to be fun, that they're going to have like shootouts every single day. You know, it's just like, whoa, that's gnarly. Like someone could die every single day and they're just cool with it. So
well, and there was like no higher power to appeal to. You know what I mean? Like he was obviously the most powerful guy in town. Nothing outranked him. There was nothing there that was going to stop him. And so even when the townspeople hired the gunfighter to come finish him off, he saw right through it and ended up killing the guy. So as the movie goes on, he just becomes like seemingly more and more undefeatable, which sort of adds to that feeling of, you know, the people who are here in over their heads and nobody's going to survive. And so that I liked. I also liked when there were the gunfights and somebody would die, there would just be the swarm of people that went and stole everything from their corpse. Right. So they'd take like the boots and the belt and the gun and the vest and the hat and everything, and then they're just left there basically in their underwear. And that had very like zombie vibes to me, where you had the idea of like, oh, I just saw my friend get, you know, eaten by zombies after he died, so now I really don't want to die. And then you kind of go through the same idea of like, if I don't win this, like there's probably no way that I'm going to win this. And when I do fall, I'm just going to be like stripped of everything I've accumulated or done in life. And so on a sort of existential level, it's quite dark.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the other creepy thing is like that's how you know how bad off it is there, by the fact of how quick.
Yeah.
You know, they even kind of, like, the dark humor of it was like, you know, it seemed like they were just all of a sudden, you know, getting their belt, their gun, and then it cuts to the scene where he's just like in his underwear, basically in his, you know, has the bloodshot coming out. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. And some of the scenes were pretty brutal too. Like, there's the one where Herod and Cantrell are having their fight, and then Herod's walking around talking about, you know, how he's the boss, and then he spins around as Cantrell's getting up and he puts the bullet like through his head, but you see that from behind.
Yeah.
And then like you see straight through the hole before he falls down. That was just absolutely brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in tying into that same concept is when you see the shadow with the hole going through it too.
That has stuck with me my whole life as an early scene that I saw in a movie.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind.
Which is a play off of, in my opinion, just because we just watched, you know, did the 100 Years of Horror of like using shadow to supplement what's going on the screen, and it's just like, oh my gosh, okay, yeah, that's intense, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then I guess the other storyline that was kind of running through all this was Court, played by Russell Crowe. And apparently he was an old partner of Herod, and at one point they had been cornered by the feds and got shot up while they were escaping and ended up at a church, and then Herod made Court kill the priest who had helped them. So now he's convinced he's damned for eternity, but is trying to like earn or do penance for that. So he's given up violence, but then Herod is like taking very sick pleasure in like making him become violent again. And that's kind of an interesting thing from, like, I don't think that's as much of the type of thing that you would find in horror so much, because if you think about like Saw or something where you have a person trying to manipulate another person, it's usually not like just to get them to violate their own morals, but it is still sort of an exercising of power over another human in a similar way, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's my thought too when watching this and seeing how horrible he is like, how does someone get to this place? You know, like, it's just crazy to think, like, I'm sure that this story had to have been influenced by something, you know, so some town that was, you know, really corrupt or, you know, something like that. And it's like, but as the character in this, you know, fictional film, how does that happen? Like, how does he get there? And it's just like, I think they're just corrupt from the beginning. Instead of having a horror where like you have one maniac that's going around just stabbing people and killing them, you have one maniac that's like controlling a whole town and basically, you know, killing them, you know, and it's just gnarly to think about.
Yeah. I feel like this one also was sort of really good at pulling off tense situations, like just the right amount of pace to keep it like moving and to keep you engaged and on the edge of your seat, because it really dug in on like where it spent its time.
Yeah.
And so the scene where Russell Crowe has the noose around his neck and he's on the chair, and then Herod starts shooting the legs out from under it, and then the chair is like sort of slowly falling apart, and he's like trying to keep his balance, and then Sharon Stone is sitting there trying to decide like what to do. Like, do I intervene in the situation and put myself at risk, or do I just let this happen? That was just so intense in that moment, and I thought that he pulled that scene off really, really well. And there were a lot of others like that in this movie too.
Yeah, was that the one with the chair where he's Gene Hackman's shooting the chair that Russell Crowe's on, but doesn't something happen where they right before she shoots the ropes, like something happens where I don't know if she says like I'll join, and they were just like no, but it's like so she tried to join the fight, and then they said something about women can't join, and I think Gene Hackman said, like, well, it's not a rule that they can't join. It's just that women can't shoot. Right, exactly.
And so then she puts the bullet straight through the rope that lets him fall to safety.
So, like, you have this build-up tension. You know, she says she'll join to try to kill the tension. No one bites on it. He makes a joke, so she has to, get it accomplished the way and I just thought that was great. Like, it was just like amazing. Like, even though it kind of took away from that tense moment, it just went, like, it almost added to it, because you're like, wait, how's the chair still up? Because, like, the way the music was playing, it sounded like the chair was fixing to break, and so you just, like, you're on edge, and then next thing you know, she's joining and stuff. But that was just like I feel like that was a Sam Raimi edition right there that would have been done in, like, the Evil Dead, that almost like a trademark.
Yeah, but to me, it felt like this one he was willing to stay serious where he needed to stay serious to pull off the scene. And in that way, this one kind of felt more horrific at times to me than some of the stuff in like Army of Darkness or Evil Dead 2. So.
Yeah, almost like he had a little less reign to...
Yeah. But yeah, and then another scene I really liked was like when they made Court and Sharon face off, and neither one would shoot, and then Herod says if neither of them shoot, his men will gun them down. And just like the way that scene built up and how intense it got before something finally happened, I thought that was another really good one.
Yeah, I mean, it was already intense, going on. He puts it, Court puts his hands in his belt behind his back, saying he's not going to shoot, and you find out it's all for show. That's like where you kind of also find out, like, the plan is going to take place. I think the other thing I really enjoyed, so, I watched this a long time ago, it was probably on TV kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
But what I really like with these style of films is I like, it's almost like a video game, the characters that you have. So you have, Sharon Stone, who's the main one, you have the bad guy, obviously, but you have Leonardo DiCaprio, who's the kid, who's playing, his own, own character, and then, you have the prisoner, and you have the ace guy, and you have so you just have all these pieces.
How's that left hand, Ace?
Yeah, and so you have all these, like, characters, and it's like a character, and it's like, I love that, like, that's just great
just a bunch of good, memorable characters.
Right, yeah, and it's like, if I was gonna be an actor, I think I would want to be on a film where it's like that, where you choose your character kind of thing, and you get to pick which one you want to be, and and I think by making them more unique, it makes them more memorable, which makes you a little bit more attached to them, even though they don't have as much screen time. Yeah. So I think that's kind of a shortcut to, like, character development, by just making them almost like a caricature of something, but something that, like, resonates with the audience. Yeah, because it's like, why not? Like, it's a film. That's what we're supposed to do. It's obviously not based on, like, a complete true story, right? So it's like, just do what you want.
Yeah.
Overall, though, man, this movie kind of hit the spot for me.
Same.
It was just like, it was kind of like a nice little, it's a good one to start off season 10 with. You have, and it's in a way, it's almost like a typical Western story, of revenge. I guess revenge isn't just a Western, but, it fits that theme of Western, and surprising for me that it's not, that it was almost considered, or that it is considered a box office flop, because it's like, hey, there was a lot of good, parts to this. Like, in my opinion, it flowed real good. It made sense. There was like you said, we were talking about the horror elements of it, which I don't think, that many people considered at the time. Maybe they will now, but, it's just like, wow, and the cast, like, it was just insane. It's like, I can't believe that this movie doesn't have as much recognition as it should.
Yeah, and I was actually looking back through some reviews trying to figure out, like, what people didn't like about it, because to me this one completely held up. And honestly, I know that we've always talked about the idea of, like, where we would love to be in life at some point is to somehow have the ability to choose movies that go into a theater and have, like, a lot of people show up for them, and then, like, experience watching some of these old movies that we love, like, in a theater with other people. Like, that would be super cool. And this one's on the list for me. I would love to watch this movie in that environment. Yeah. But with some of the reviews I read, the acting was actually a thing that was heavily criticized, and I was kind of surprised by that.
Really?
Yeah. And I think that maybe that's just because some of the characters were such, like, over-the-top, kind of caricature-y versions. And so you weren't really looking for, like, nuanced acting from Ace, right?
Mm-hmm.
The guy, what was his name?
Eugene Dredd. Yeah.
Dredd. Yeah. So he was like abusing the tavern owner's daughter. You didn't really need him to be anything other than a big creep that would make Sharon get mad and challenge him and then end up shooting him, right? Like, he was the character that played his role to keep things moving, and I didn't really need like an in-depth profile of him. It's like, okay, a minute into him being on the screen, I get who he is and what he's about and how the other characters will react to him, but it wasn't him that they were trying to develop. Like, a lot of these side characters I felt like were more there just to almost like give the characters that you're supposed to care about something to react to, which then made you more interested in them because most of the side characters got shot and killed anyway.
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen, if and I do this with certain films, I think when I'm kind of nitpicking it, but like my thought, like if you're watching The Quick and the Dead because like of character development or something, like you're probably in like the wrong spot. Like, this is just like a set film. Like,
yeah,
you find out stuff about like Sharon Stone's character Ellen a little bit and about Court a little bit, but it's like, even like with Leonardo DiCaprio, who wasn't nearly as as famous as he is now. I mean, still a famous actor. Is like even his character, like, okay, you kind of find out that's his dad. Obviously, Gene Hackman doesn't love him, kills him, but it's we're not watching this. This isn't like The Revenant or like a Daniel Day-Lewis film.
Yeah,
like this is just made out to be a Western action film, and that's what you got. And hey, if you're watching this thinking that's what you're gonna get, like The Revenant, then hey, just.
Then hey, I got a movie recommendation for you.
It's called The Revenant.
I was going to say, why don't you go watch Nosferatu the Vampire?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Why don't you go watch a slow burn Werner Herzog portrayal of a work of classic literature?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the same people who did the reviews probably liked some of those, but under the skin.
I'll fight him, dude. I don't even care.
No, dude. So fast. I mean, yeah. This is exactly what I think. I would want in a Western. You get everything you want. You get shooting. You get action. You get interesting storyline. You get just everything a Western hits. I mean, I'm talking like even the guns. Like like so they had different guns. So like the Swede had like his had like the black powder pistol, and you had like Ace had his special, and even like Sergeant Cantrell, he had like his that you just swivel. It's just like everyone had. I just like that individuality that each character had. Like that takes time to develop, and for me it paid off.
Yeah, to me this was like all of the best of Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
So anyway. That's our review of The Quick and the Dead, and you should watch it if you haven't, because I think horror fans would still enjoy this movie. And then next week we're going to be back with another movie that isn't technically horror, but we have reviewed so many movies that were supposed to be horror that weren't scary, I don't feel guilty about it.
That's a good point. At least we're up front. At least it's up front.
Exactly. Like I still feel like this was a better horror movie than some of the horror movies we've watched in previous seasons. So yeah, fight me. Yeah. All right. Peace out.
See you guys.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.